Good morning. Welcome. My name's Todd Gleason. I produce the radio and television news for the College of Agricultural, Consumer, and Environmental Sciences, U of I Extension on campus in Urbana-Champaign. So glad to be here in Peoria at the Civic Center for the Illinois Soybean Summit. I'm glad that you made it in. It was kind of a rough skate last night. I tried to make it over yesterday morning and had to stop and turn around and go back home, frankly, in the morning, but last night was a little easier drive. Glad to see you here. We'll get started now. We're going to skip just that first item that's in your list. We won't skip it entirely, but we're going to wait until after we've heard from Chad Colby. So we're going to move very quickly to Chad Colby. Is everybody familiar with Chad? Have you seen him? If you follow him on Twitter, it's @TheChadColby. That's a great place to keep up with him. He does a lot with drones. In fact, around the nation, maybe on the planet, he is one of the best known agricultural drone experts, and he lives not very far away from here. I give you Chad Colby. He's going to take you through about the next 45 minutes. Chad, come on up. Give him a nice, warm welcome, please.
Well, first of all, good morning. It's my pleasure to be here. I get the unique opportunity to speak and talk to farmers and growers really honestly around the world. And this date's been circled on my calendar for quite a while, and honestly, it's because it's home for me. You know, I grew up about 50 miles north of here, and you know, when I got here, I've been talking to people I haven't talked to in several years today since I've already been here, and it's been a real treat. You know, I think when you start looking at events like this and other ones, at the end of the day, our mission has really always been about yield, right? It's what do we do, what can we do different? And you know, it wasn't any different when I grew up on our family farm. You know, that picture right there of me being pulled by my dad in a wagon, you know, what you can't tell in that picture is I'm a mad little 2-year-old, because I was driving the lawnmower with Dad on his lap, and then he put me in the wagon, and I think that irritated me. But you know, my father on our farm wasn't any different. That's my dad there on the right. Everybody did the best they could. We've always done that. And I think what you're going to see today here at this conference, certainly in these presentations, are things to make you think outside the box. And that's really what it's all about, honestly. You know, you think about how far technology has come here in the recent years, it's really amazing. You know, I remember having the discussion with my father about whether our farming operation needed a computer or not, literally. And my dad thought I was nuts, because the local computer store about 20 miles away, it was a couple $1,000s to buy a computer. Dad wouldn't let me do it, so I had to build my own. And you know, that's kind of somewhat comical now, but at the end of the day, you know, then we got the big technology break on the farm, and that's a mobile phone, right? And now you take and you think about what you can do with devices. You think about what you can do with this device, and it literally now has more power than the computing power that was in the first space shuttle. Literally is in basically all the pockets right now in our shirt. And you know, I think the scary part of technology is that people don't understand how much technology agriculture has today. They see the tractor in the field, and they think, you know, hey, there's my tenant, there's my farmer, he's driving in the field, he's got his auto steer turned on, he's tweeting all day, he's got Netflix up on his iPad, and the tractor's driving itself. And the fact of the matter is, I think our cabs are more sophisticated than ever. You know, when I look inside this technology and I talk to OEMs that make the equipment, I go, guys, you got to knock it off. It's way too complicated. It doesn't need to be that way. Because you look at that slide on the right, man, for a lot of us in the room, that's not a friendly place, okay? And you start thinking about where our operations are going. This slide here really brings it all to tail, and most of the technology shown is already here. We're already communicating in ways we never thought we could. From our equipment to our livestock to the data management, all those things factor in. And you know, when you talk about technology, you have to talk about the changes and how things develop. And I love talking about that. My wife will be here soon. Our babysitter was a little tardy this morning, but I will tell you this, I've always been a geek, okay? I've always bought the latest, greatest. And that's not an easy thing to do. And I've said for years, I want to take a device like my phone, I want to walk it at night, and I want to put it in a stand, and I want to run everything with my phone, everything. And we are getting very close to that. That photo on the lower left there, that's been out here about 3 days, and that's where this is going. And that's a great thing, because when you start talking about unmanned and some of the technology I'm going to share with you this morning, you honestly won't believe it. And the stuff I'm showing you, there is nothing here that doesn't already exist in some way, shape, or fashion. Granted, some of it's a little price prohibitive right now. You look right now at that top left on the slide, that is technology now that literally has collision avoidance. That's going to be nearly standard equipment on unmanned systems here in the near future. You don't have to worry about hitting a tree because it won't let you, because it will see the tree. Pretty cool stuff. New apps, new sensors. We're going to talk about some of that today. And it's amazing how much the pricing of that equipment has come down. A sensor I'll show you later in the presentation 3 years ago was $35,000. A year ago, about $6,000. And I was telling the guys at the table this morning, for this year it's $3,500. So what does that mean in a year or two? That means it's going to be, I don't know, integrated into our phone. It's going to be $200 or $300 and available for all of us to use. You know, I love this next slide. If you would, make sure we're on the slide. You guys have all heard of the Tesla car, battery powered. It has autonomous mode where you can drive. But get this, you can actually drive your car up from your cell phone now. True story. So maybe you don't want to get wet walking out to your car. You can summon your car from your phone. So where's this going in our industry? I see a lot of smiles in the room. That's the kind of technology that exists. And I argue time and time again with people that at the end of the day, really the rise of technology with our smartphones and our tablets is really what's changed things. You know, the thing that gets my attention right now, and you'll see a stat here in a minute, you know, not only is there over 100 million of these out there, over 60 million are the latest models of smartphones, especially when you start talking about Apple. But the real fact of the matter, the tablet is what's really changed things. And I don't know that there's anybody in this room that will really disagree with me, but this next slide really tells the tale. You know, you start looking at how this technology's changed, and I always tell people, it's one thing to say you have an iPhone or have an iPad, it's another thing to understand you have to move with the technology. Check this out. Where you see that red line, that basically shows the speed and performance of cell phones. And if you have an iPhone 5 or less, you need to get rid of it. And I'm not telling you that because I'm trying to spend your money. What I'm telling you is, if I told you if you went to the Chevy dealership and your pickup that you currently drive that's 2 years old gets 20 miles to the gallon, but the new Chevy gets 70, we would all go buy them today. And iPads are the same way, probably even more so. If you got an iPad that is not an iPad Air, look on the screen and you can see those blue graphs. Look where that red line is. That's generation 3 and below. Look at the top of the page. You see those graphs go way over? We're talking 4 or 5 times more performance on a device that arguably most of us are using all the time. So please, make sure in your investments of technology that you keep the things that you use all the time as current as possible. I will tell you there's new iPhones not until late in the year. Big rumbling that there's probably a new iPad here next month. So just kind of keep that in mind as well. When we talk about unmanned, it's got a long history, and I have no intention to get into that. Remote sensing, whether it's from a balloon back in the day or whatever it was in any of the conflicts we fought around the world, has been around for a long time. It's just really new to us here in agriculture. From the simple fact, you know, I've got friends in the industry that have been doing remote sensing in agriculture for 20 and 30 years. The physical data is not new. It's the speed that how we get it. And when you talk about drones and unmanned, one of the neatest stats I know is this one that just popped up on the screen now. Is, you know, more than a third of our active Air Force now is unmanned. We've got a new strike fighter. You guys have all seen it, whatever it's called, the F-35, fancy new, you know, hot rod jet aircraft for combat, air-to-air stuff. The next generation will not have a pilot, period. Better watch your Top Gun movie because it's not going to happen again. They're going to be doing it from the ground. That's already proven. And there's a lot of great new technology driven from the military, and we're starting to see that now. You look at this little slide here down in the corner, that little micro drone. That's a story worth telling itself. I spoke at the AUVSI, which is the largest basically robotic, any form of robotic conference in the world. Walked up to the manufacturer of that. We started talking about it, and you know, he said it's basically made for urban warfare, where you go into a building, you deploy a bunch of them, you put a little headgear on, you can see where people are, all this stuff. And I said, hey, what if I had a an 80-acre field, and I want to deploy 50 of those and have them do X, Y, and Z in the field. And the guy just looked at me and he said, for probably $70 to $100 million, you could easily fund a study to do that. And I'm like, easy there, big fella, right? But the fact of the matter is, he didn't tell me no. And I think that's the key, is the understanding right now is there's no limits on our technology. That's a little scary for some of us in the room, and I'll give you that. But it's also important to understand the impact that unmanned is going to have on agriculture. If this was a meeting 15 years ago, and I stood up here on behalf of John Deere and said, you know what, guys, everybody in this room 12 years from now is going to have auto steer, and it's going to be standard equipment, you guys all would have laughed me off the stage. And now if you buy any new tractor, it is standard equipment, and that's just a common practice. And I'm going to tell you, unmanned systems is exactly that, except it's going to come so much quicker. The biggest challenge we've had in the United States is the regulation. And for a lot of us in the room, it's easy to understand than others. And for some of us, it's a little challenging. And I'm one of those people. So show of hands in the room. Who in this room is a licensed pilot to fly real airplanes? Show of hands. Very typical. Whether I'm speaking to 1,000 people or 50, there's usually 3 or 4 of us. So what that means, unfortunately, is there's 2 people in this room that understands general aviation. They understand the laws, the regulations, everything that goes with it, and it's not easy. If we were having a firearm safety class today, it'd be real easy, because for the majority of us, we were taught to use those from a young age. That's very simple to understand. This is something new, and it's something that's a little bit challenging, because you have to abide by the regulations. The challenge has been the FAA has been a little slow in getting that out. There's 2 ways that you can fly today, so everybody in this room is clear. You can fly as a hobbyist, which simply means I'm flying around taking pictures for fun, period. If you make decisions with the data or you charge money for it, you have to get what's called a 333 exemption. There's about 2,500 of them in the United States. It's not terrible to get one. You got to go through the process, get an attorney. Oh, I forgot, and you have to be a private pilot to do that. So that eliminates, everybody in the room but 2 of us, okay? That's the bad news. That's where we are today. So there are companies you can hire that will come and fly. And this next map that's up here now, this is a map of about a 50-mile radius around Bloomington. You can see there are companies you can do that. Unfortunately, the red dots on the map are companies like State Farm, Caterpillar, Growmark, the big boys. They have this. That's the ugly side of things. The more positive side is where the FAA is going right now. The reality of this is they've got a new procedure. There's some new laws and regulations that are coming later this year that you can all go. You can go to a 1-day class, and you'll be able to do commercial things with unmanned systems. So stay tuned there. The most important thing I can tell you, if somebody comes to your farm and they say, Mr. Grower, for $9 an acre, we'll fly your farm. If he doesn't have a 333 exemption, don't do it. Because right now, they're under more scrutiny than ever. So keep that in mind. So show of hands, who in this room does have an unmanned system? Who does have a drone? Who owns one? I talked to a few people this morning. So there's about a half a dozen of you. Make sure you register those. If you have an unmanned system more than a half a pound in your house that you fly for a hobby, you need to register those ships. The rules are pretty simple right now. I'm not going to get into all those details. They're up on the screen. It's a $5 fee. It covers the operator. And basically the bottom line is you put a little number on the ship, and then if you do something reckless or unresponsible, they know whose ship it is. That's the long and short of it. They've registered about 400,000 of these so far, and they've actually registered more of those than conventional aircraft. There are a few basic guidelines. I just want everybody to know. I'm going to go through these super fast, I promise, then we'll get to the fun stuff. Obviously, you're going to fly under 400 feet. That's been the remote control industry standard for decades. That's nothing new. You're always going to keep the ship within visible sight. So that means you always have to see it. I get the question all the time, how high will they go, Chad, and how far? Well, if on an Air Force base in Grand Forks, North Dakota, you're flying drones on the other side of the world, I don't have to tell you how far the range is, right? There's technology exists, we can do that. But the fact of the matter is you have to stay clear of manned aircraft. Obviously, you're responsible for the airspace. So if you live in, right now, downtown Peoria, what that means is you need to know where you're flying and you're responsible. You're not going to fly over people, not over stadiums. All these things are pretty basic. Obviously not near airports is probably a pretty big one, right? But the good part is, for most of us in this room, the fact of the matter is we just want to fly over a cornfield or a soybean field. That's what we want to do. You'll get a little certificate that you'll keep with you. I would encourage you not to share your number that you can see up on the screen here. Rest assured, that's not my number. Those of you of my vintage will laugh. 8675309 is not my number. But they're changing some things also with the regulations. Here yesterday they announced the FAA is going to have a micro drone rule. And this is what Canada has in Australia and other places around the room. And basically means a small ship like this Phantom that's sitting up here on the table. The nice part about that is if it's under 4.4 pounds, as long as you abide by the regulations, there's not going to be any. You're not going to have to you have to go through the whole process of getting a commercial license and all those things. So for those of you that have businesses, you really need to stay current on where this is going here over the next 6 to 10 months, because it's going to change like we've never seen before. The regulation is out there. You can actually view it. It's a nice document if you like to read a 200-page double-sided document from the FAA. But there's a lot of challenges in this industry, right? I don't think I'm telling anybody in this room things you don't know. You know, aerial applicators right now, that's a big deal, because you are responsible for making sure you're clear of aircraft. You know, we've all seen the slide. We've all watched the video where Captain Sully put his Airbus in the drink in the Hudson River. Saved all those people, did an amazing job, very accomplished, well-trained pilot with a very current, modern avionics, if you would, modern aircraft. But what I will tell you about Captain Sully, at the end of the day, you know where the Lord really blessed him? And it was the sheer fact he had the Hudson River. Because you can't land airliners off airports and keep them intact. It just doesn't work. And my fear with this technology is, for a lot of us in the room, you buy it, but you don't know what to do if something goes wrong. And that's part of the challenge, is we got a lot of folks in the room that are interested, but you got to learn how to use it and learn how to use it safely. That, to me, I think is going to be an issue. You know, we've talked about general aviation and how busy things are as far as checklists and workflows and those things. At the end of the day, you have to learn to operate this equipment that way. If it's not safe, don't fly. The other big challenge I see is this. This is a photo of my wife Karen and I's oldest little girl. This is Bristol. For some of you in the room that have known me the better part of my life, I will tell you, you'd get a real kick out of meeting Bristol, because I'd love to tell you that the apple didn't fall far from the tree. I kicked the apple, it rolls back down. And you know, when I talk to Bristol about this stuff, you know what's going to be neat is when Bristol's 8, 9, and 10, this is going to be normal for her. She knows if Dad's flying an unmanned system, and she loves it, she has to either grab my pant leg, literally, or sit in the truck, period. There's no running around because the stuff is too dangerous. This little fun little white ship that's sitting up here on the counter can easily, if it makes contact with your skin, it's going to stop at bone, regardless of what's in the way. Whether that's your cheek or your throat or your eye, it doesn't matter. There's people that have been seriously injured. The other challenge is protecting our airspace. And I could tell you with this image, there's some new technology that's out right now that will detect radio frequencies around special events and will actually can either take the platform down and really protect the region. So that's some new stuff that's coming. If you are a flyer, and there were a handful of you in the room, and there will be a lot more that are considering this for this year, write this one down. There's an app called Before You Fly, put on by the FAA. That app will take your location and tell you if anything's nearby that you should know about before you fly, which is very good. The bottom line with the challenges in the FAA is this next picture, and it's just one of my favorites. Leave it to John Wayne to simplify using unmanned systems. At the end of the day, okay, it's your responsibility, and you need to make smart decisions with it, period. Flying over a cornfield in the middle of Nebraska or a soybean field in northern Illinois is not a big deal, unless there's something else going on and you take things out of that context. So as we move to kind of the fun topics of the day, we need to talk a little bit about aerial application from a remote system. And the reason why I have this in the slide deck is because it humbles me very much to tell you this. That ship that you see on the screen right here, that's called a Yamaha R-Max. It's pretty interesting. It's a remote control ship. You can see it right here. It's in the back of, well, not a real truck, but one of them little ones, right? And it gives you an idea of how big it is. It depends on how you equip it, somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000. It can apply 3 or 4 acres. Pretty interesting. Do you know they started flying that in the mid-'80s? And it's been flying commercially in Japan since 1990. And you think, what? Wait, it gets worse, or better, I would say. They apply 2.5 million acres a year with that platform, and it has over 2 million flight hours. And why in the world are we just hearing about it now? The fact of the matter is, we're very efficient in how we do things. Am I going to stand up on this stage and tell you 3 years from now, you're going to call your co-op and they're going to dispatch a remote control ship to go fly 1,000 acres this afternoon? Absolutely not, okay? But I will tell you, this is some of the technology that does exist. The challenge with unmanned systems is really how to get started and what to do. I've been fighting this for several years. And the fact of the matter is, how do you start? What do you do? The worst thing you can possibly do is to misunderstand this statement. If you go to the Chevy dealership, you're going to buy a half-ton truck. You can spend $30,000 or you can spend $50,000. I don't have to tell anyone in this room that there's going to be a few differences between the $30,000 truck and the $50,000 one, right? If you're going to buy your wife a necklace and it's her birthday, if you spend $500, it's a really nice necklace. If you spend $1,500, it's a lot more. So when I stand in front of the room and tell you that in that black box you can buy a system just like this for a couple grand, a lot of you will go, wow, that's cool. And some of you will go, well, what if I spend 4? Well, what if I spend 12? Hold on a minute. A lot of the times that doesn't mean it's better at all. And worst case is, a lot of the times those really expensive ships that I've bought and went down this road, they have no resale value on the back end when you're done. So you got to be really careful about what you buy. There's basically 2 different types depending on what your mission is. And it's important that you define your mission before you buy. Do you need to fly a lot of acres? Is it windy conditions? What are you exactly trying to do? Do you need to carry multiple sensors? What are your plans? Hey, I just want to take some pictures. Great. Well, there's 2 real options. A wing platform like you see on the screen now, that's a fixed wing. We've had great success with it the last couple years. There's several other ones out there. This was one that I used and worked real well. I can tell you the first 2 years we used it, it was very cumbersome. I very much was a remote control hobbyist. And I can tell you that there's not really anyone in the room that would want to keep up with the challenge of that. But I can tell you as we move forward, some of the new wings now and new technology, it's a couple button pushes, throw it, it takes off, comes back and lands within 10 feet of you, fully autonomous. And that works really good. This slide up here, if you would please, really gives you an idea what that looks like. That's a screenshot from a computer, very, very easy to use. And then obviously you got the multi-rotor statement. We're all using those. Those are very handy. Something like what you see up on the stage. And what really changed that in the last 12 months is the ability to stream 720 HD in real time. And you look at that screenshot right there, you can stream as far as you can see the ship, which is a 1/2 to 3/4 of a mile. You can't see any more than that. 720 HD in real time right to your iPad. And that is pretty amazing, regardless of what ship you have. Those are some options that, to me, are a must-have. If you're looking at a platform and it doesn't stream HD onto an iPad, to me, it's not worth having right now. But when you talk about that technology, you got to back up and talk about the basics of use. What are we going to do with it? How is there, I don't want to say a return on my investment, but what can it give me that I don't already have? And when you look at the basics and talk about the basics, this little video clip here, that should play okay here. All this is from this platform right here. This was down by Springfield. After all the fun that we fought this year with all the extra rain, you can see a lot of things in this field. You can see traffic patterns, you can see nitrogen deficiencies, you can see a whole bunch. And I don't know about any of you in this field, in this room, but you know what? That's a 360-acre field. I don't think I want to go walk that after a 5-inch rain. But the fact of the matter is, this short little video tells a lot, right? This grower's got some issues. The fact of the matter is, with a piece of technology that's a couple $1,000s sitting behind the seat of your truck that anybody in here can use, you can generate this kind of data. And for those of you that aren't checking the box, for those of you that are pushing the yields, that are trying things, right? Different hybrids, different populations, doing your old field trials, all those things, what an amazing tool. The image on the screen now shows a population trial. You can obviously see where he pushed it a little too much and where the corn went down. And I can keep going. I mean, there's just so many great images here of problems that you can easily see, and then you involve the cavalry. Then you get your agronomists, then you get your seedsmen, then you go out and you figure out what went wrong and what can you do to fix that. And that's really where this technology comes in. I'm never going to tell you that a drone is going to replace a satellite or an airplane for remote sensing, ever, because I use both today. But what I will tell you, when I work with a lot of the growers in Central California, where for the last 10 years, they're flying fields 3 and 4 times a week, you know what they tell me? We can't get the data quick enough. It takes 4 or 5 days to get the data back from an airplane. We need the data right now. We're trying to manage a crop that yields somewhere between, in a lot of cases, $20,000 to $30,000 an acre. And that's the challenge, is can we get that data quickly? This next image was taken not far from actually where I grew up. You look out of the window, you're seeing a nice field of wheat. Looks good, right? I mean, that's looking at it from the truck window. Look at it from above. Looks a little different story. The other thing I find tremendously valuable with the technology is assessments after weather. There's no one in this room that's going to convince me that spending $2,000 is a waste of money when we all have weather events, you can go evaluate them. The image that's up there now, that was taken 2 years ago in northern Illinois after 70-mile-an-hour wind. And the interesting part of the story that I like to tell with that is the grower, who's a friend of mine, he bought a system at that time, was $3,000, and he said he's putting in a new grain leg, and he just wanted to take pictures. Literally, that's all he wanted to do. And when the big winds came, him and his dad and grandpa got in the truck, and by 8:30 in the morning, they had 850 acres that was laying flat, and they were stunned at all the decisions that they thought about because they knew it right away. We're talking about crop rotation, we're talking about disease, we're talking about the plan for fall, obviously insurance, marketing, boom, 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 and they never got their boots dirty. And they checked their 3,000 acres and determined they had 800 that was in trouble. I'm just telling you, that's what this technology is about. And for all of you folks in this room today, these images here hit close to home. Because when you have tremendous weather issues, it's really nice to know where you stand. And sometimes that's not a pretty picture. This image up there now is from a good friend of mine in northwest Bureau County. And he was honestly trying to figure out what kind of damage he had. This is a 480-acre field. And he's got some big problems. A lot of guys are using it in the tile industry for a lot of different reasons. Obviously, this is the extreme side of things. But, a lot of guys are doing it right after rain on a normal year to detect leaks in your tile systems and all those things. So it's pretty neat stuff. Taking it to the next step, and I know there's not a lot of that here, but it's worth talking about. A lot of guys are using it in infrastructure, so evaluating their drainage systems, not only that, but also their irrigation systems as well. The next step for this will be putting on thermal cameras so they can actually monitor the flow of water coming out of the nozzle, because that is an issue, and guys are using that now in Nebraska. And then I've got some friends out west. This is a grower out there that I know that, in his words, we're putting in a bigger straw. Must have something to do with that little drought they have going on out there. And pretty neat how the operator of that drill rig came over to me and he's like, "Hey, would you save me an hour?" I'm like, "What's that?" He goes, "Will you fly up to the top of the mast right there and check something for me?" I was like, "Sure." And we did that in 2 minutes, and I listened to him order a ship as he walked away. I mean, there's just a lot of great uses. Local elevators now are starting to use them as well for inspections. I could go on and on about the great uses. Even the FAA has said they know this is a more practical way to do inspections of equipment. Obviously, our windmills, you can see that right here. This is a picture I took near my father-in-law's farm. But honestly, I've got 15 minutes to go, and what I will tell you this is, the most exciting part of this for me is imagery. It's the physical imagery. For many of you in the room, it's going to take you a little time to get over the fact you can take some cool pictures and do it safely. I've got friends in the 70s, 70 plus years old, that have never been pilots, never been RC guys, that are flying this stuff with great success. My focus the last year has really been on imagery, and let's talk about it. The slide you see up there now, that is a satellite imagery. The one this is all the same field, by the way. We worked on this for about 3 days to do this. It was kind of crazy, but that's kind of how I am. This is probably the top third of that image. This is with a fixed wing with a $2,000 camera system that's basically designed to get an NDVI image. The image on the right is another camera, and all it's doing is taking an RGB image, so just a normal color photo. Both of those photos you see up there now are a combination of about 80 images that the software stitched together. And the challenge that I've had for these companies that make this technology is, don't just give me another color map. Don't just give me another one of these. What are we going to do with it? If I hand this map to any grower in this room, you're going to know exactly what's going on there because you're the farmer. You're going to know that's a low spot, and you're going to know this is some drainage that the neighbor's helping you out with from the north. You're going to know all those things. You're going to know the variety changes, the population changes, all those things. The challenge becomes we need to get good data. That's a frustrating topic for me that I am not going to touch in 45 minutes. But I will show you this. When I'm evaluating fields and looking at fields, the first thing I do now is to come above it and take one shot at 250 feet or 300. It gives you a quick glimpse. Not that the fun, high-tech technology is not really good, but the basics are still very valuable. These next few slides here are pretty interesting. That's a 200-acre wheat field. Good friend of my father's flew on wheat and standing corn. That's fun. Not sure how they got on that road. They wanted me to fly it to see how it was doing, and it was a mess. This is the flight plan. All those little yellow boxes are all the individual photos. This is the NIF imagery of that where you can see it converted into NDVI. And you can see the streaks out in the field, and that's because they did every other pass with nitrogen. And I'm like, Jim, why did you do that? And he's like, I'm not really sure. And maybe that wasn't really a good idea. And I said, well, what is going on with this corner? Well, we had a little extra left, so we threw some more in this corner. Like, well, that's a nice mesh you have there. The fact of the matter is we can get the data quickly, and that's really the difference. The image you see up on the screen now, this was taken in 2014, and I was there. This was my story. 2014 in North Dakota, they had a nice crop brewing. When we were there, corn was basically a couple feet over my head, just going to tassel, and we had Y drop in the field on a John Deere sprayer. And it rained for 2 weeks when we got there, so we couldn't really go use it. But the grower insisted. He's like, let's go out and make a couple passes. So we did. We went out in the field in 20-mile-an-hour wind, and we made 2 passes. You can see them right here. And I was running the machine. I'll be honest with you, thought it was a complete waste of time. Corn was even, looked like $1 million. And for up there, it looked perfect. I almost got sick in the sprayer. And for a lot of you that know me, I'm a motorsports operator geek. And the wind was blowing so bad, you couldn't see the rows. It was terrible. I made 2 passes. Those 2 passes were 30 bushel yield increases in corn. And the argument I have is in 2014, we really had no way to go get quick data from drones to determine, are we seeing something here that maybe we should go fly on some more urea or make another decision? We do now. And I think that's the challenge. So I'd like to show you some examples of that. So this is the same unmanned system right here. This was last week in Central California. This video is going to play right in the middle. That's a 160-acre field right there. And basically all we did was punch out the boundaries. You hit a button, it does a little checklist, and you're going to see the operator hit the little button. It takes off on its own. It's a system very similar to that one. And basically it goes up and it maps that field and takes the images. And then when it's done, you'll watch. The field's already been mapped. If you look, it's covered the whole field. Took about 16 minutes. And here it comes back and lands. You're going to get an image like this that shows all the photos. Then they start to stitch together. What you're looking at right here in that triangle, that is we call an orthomosaic. That is all the individual color RGB photos stitched together. You say, okay, Chad, I'm with you so far. That's an almond field. And when you zoom in on the almond field, you can see the almond trees. But the interesting part of the software today, they can actually take the data from a normal color photo, and they can start doing their own NDVI images from that. I'm not going to tell you that this is not better than a fancy $3,000 camera, because it's not. The $3,000 camera ones are way better. But this is an incredible first step on how to use it yourself on a platform that costs a couple $1,000s. Really interesting stuff. There is really no cost involved. It costs $100 a month, unlimited acres. It's amazing what's available now that anybody in this room can use. You can go back into the data. You can drop a waypoint with a lat and long if you see something you don't like, and you can also manipulate the data as well, which is pretty neat. Watch this slide. This is a potato field up in Idaho, and look at the operator up here, just adjusting the data, and look at how the data changes. You can do all that today with the technology that exists. It's absolutely phenomenal. And there's some new stuff that's coming as well that it's just hard for me to even describe to you. This was stuff we used a lot last year with a lot of great success. The other education I need to give you is really around the sensors. Because a lot of companies that you've heard and talked with over the years here, especially the last couple, will tell you they can take a GoPro camera, pull the lenses out, and make a converted camera. I'm going to tell you, I've got about 8 of those at home and a bunch of other cameras that we've converted. And I'm a little bit stubborn. I thank my father for that. And at the end of the day, I've learned that that is just not the right direction. It's not consistent enough data. So let me show you. If you look on the screen, that's a converted camera from 400 feet in a cornfield. This camera right here, this is a multispectral image, and you can see the data looks completely different. So here's what you guys don't know in the room that I'm happy to share with you. When you look at the data between these two cameras, what I want you to know is only this fact. When you use a multispectral camera that's specifically designed, I want you to notice how narrow the bands are. See this green band right here? You see how narrow that is? You see how wide that is from your RGB standard camera? The narrow band is what gives you good data. My thing with all these companies that have this technology is this. If I'm a grower in this room, and whether I have a $2,000 system or a $15,000 system, I'm still looking for the same thing. Over time in the field, show me what's going on. Show me the difference, and is that difference something I can fix? With irrigation, drainage, nutrients, whatever the case may be. And you look at the slide that's up here now, this is some of the work we did last year, and you start to look at the same field that we kept photoing time after time, you can start to see changes. And the question is, before I go spend $8,000 or $10,000 or $12,000 on more land, am I better off spending $3,000 or $2,000 an acre and honestly pattern tiling one of the farms I've had for 20 years? That's some of the decisions you get to make with this technology. Where's it going from here? It's kind of my favorite topic. You look at the slide that's up here now. This was some of the technology we used last year, kind of been on a limited basis, but it was unbelievable. That is a screenshot from my iPad from the fixed wing. The fixed wing last year had a cellular antenna on board, and while it was flying, it was uploading pictures in flight. So let me show you how this works, and hopefully you guys can see this. Where the green is, I have yet to fly. Where the white, I've already flown. And right here where my little green pointer is, up in the upper left corner, it's going to show you that I've taken 276 images. I've uploaded 260, I believe it says. And this right here is the data coming back while I'm still in the air. That's winning the lottery. So what's the next step? The next step is these little ships like the one I have in front of you, and I'll power it up here in just a second. They're going to have cellular connectivity in the future. That's very soon. And that means while that little package for $2,000 is flying, it'll have that same capability to upload in flight so you get the data right back. Some other technology I want to share with you here, if I can get a handheld mic working for me. I think we do. I think this one's actually better. So what's coming now that's really neat is thermal. The price of thermal is actually coming down as far as cost goes. So give me just a second here. I'm going to get my phone happy here. This little device, to my cameraman, let's go over here. Can you hit my hand? I'll try to hold this still. Basically what this does is it's a $250 little option that puts on your phone that gives your cell phone thermal capabilities. What does this do in the field? I have no idea. We haven't done it yet. Okay? But I can tell you this, we've had it in grain bins, we've had it on combines. This is pretty neat. And for $250, it works pretty cool. So anyway, I want to show that to you. obviously, the hot ticket is going to be mounting that on an unmanned system, right? They're already using that in the livestock industry, as you can see right here, to detect things that you can't see with your eyes. There are some platforms now where you can mount the same technology on an unmanned system, and you can watch that data right on your iPad, like you'll see right here. If you look at this video that's playing right here, this is myself a few months ago in San Francisco when they launched the technology, and you can see me changing the color palette. It is absolutely phenomenal. We should have this in about the next 20 days. For certain, we will have it this spring in the field. I can't wait. What are all the capabilities? Not really sure. I don't know yet. But I'm pretty excited about this because thermal is a wavelength of light that we can't see with our eyes. So now you go out to that field, you fly it normally, you think maybe you see something, then we're going to go back with thermal. The other thing that's pretty neat is this slide. That's what that looks like on an iPad in real time, which is pretty cool. So where are we going? What's the future look like? And I can tell you there's really no limits, but what I want to do in these next few slides as I wind up is I want to give you a glimpse of some things that you won't believe. In fact, I was talking with some folks earlier, like, can you email that to me? Because that's pretty neat. I think you're going to see more work in the soil. We know that's happening. I love telling this story. I was a keynote speaker at a consumer event or commercial drone event on the behalf of agriculture in Las Vegas. And a friend of mine, I walked up to him, and as I did, he sent me that photo. If you can, leave it on that right there if you would. Everybody's going to want to remember this one. He's like, hey, Chad, did you get that picture? And I'm like, what am I doing? I could see a soybean plant. There's some little sensor in the ground. He said, that's a biodegradable sensor that we put in the ground when we planted. And I went, what? He's like, yeah. And I said, what can you tell me about it? He said, nothing. But I knew if we gave you a photo, you would share it around the world when you traveled. And I was like, great, thanks, guys. All I'm telling you is, I talked to some folks from Monsanto recently. They think we're 2 to 3 years out before some unbelievable in-soil sensor technology. We're talking about nutrient management in real time. That's a game changer, because for a lot of us, we just put on nutrients like we've done in the past, and that's always been good enough. I think we can do a better job. Obviously, as many of you know, especially where we are today, if you haven't been around the 360 soil scan, that's a pretty slick machine to get some data right in the field, and it works really well. Automation is going to continue in equipment. I took this image in Australia. Yeah, a little tractor doing its thing. Oh, I forgot. There's nobody in it, and it's fully autonomous. And then you keep hearing a lot of rumors about some advanced robotics. That's honestly coming. That machine right there can detect weeds and then mechanically remove them, is how that works. As far as unmanned, here's what you got for the next probably 8 to 10 months. You're going to see a real good, solid concrete footprint for what the legislation and regulation is going to be like. You're also going to see continued development for line of sight, beyond line of sight. For a lot of users like myself, I need to fly more than 160. When I'm in the middle of nowhere, North Dakota, and I want to fly a section, I can't see that much. So there's some technology coming there. I think workflow is going to get better. I really do. There's some companies working very hard on some new forms of workflow. And that means after I take the image, how does it integrate into everything else that we're doing, right? And that's really a key component as well. Obviously, batteries are going to get better as well. You'll see that. And then sensors, right? I love this slide because it's terribly not practical, but it's fun to share. This is an insulator on a power line from 2,000 feet away, and you could read the serial number. That's the size of the print in your newspaper. Granted, that technology is about $90,000. And then there's some other new sensors that we talked about. And here in the last week, the thermal technology that I just showed you, guess what? Caterpillar integrated it into a cell phone in the last week, just to give you a glimpse. To learn more about this, the best place to go is knowbeforeyoufly.org. Whether that's your neighbor across the street, you're at a high school football game and you're worried about safety, and you get to talk to the principal and he doesn't know what to do, send them there. That's the best place to go. And then this is all my contact info. Same phone number I've had for 20 years. Anything I've ever learned, I don't sell any equipment, I share with growers around the world. So if you have any questions, call me. I'd be happy to help you. The last thing I want to show you really quick is this. Awesome, technology's working. Is this simple little demonstration. I took the ship out of the case, I have the controller in my hand, right? So what are we doing? We're simulating the tailgate of your pickup. I'm going to turn the drone on. I'm going to turn the controller on. I'm going to open up the app. And it shouldn't take too long. You get to watch in 720 HD in real time video. Flies for almost 20 minutes. Can handle 25-mile-an-hour wind. Super easy to use. I'm going to be around till at least probably 10:30 or 11 till I need to go speak at another event. I want to thank you guys very much. Have a safe spring. God bless. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them after. Thank you.